Welcome to Cancer and Peace. My name is Sean Stewart, and today I'm facilitating a continued conversation on questions that cancer patients ask. And Peter Scalzo, our host, is going to be picked over today. We're going to pick his brain clean with this next set of questions. So are you ready for this?
Yeah, there might be a few things left.
There might be a few things left.
Yeah, maybe.
Our audience will be the judge of that, but we're going to get going on these. So anyway, we talked about different questions last time from, will I suffer? Can I handle pain? How do I handle the pain? Should I pursue faith healing? This time I want to talk about something we've kicked around a little bit, but just we'll ask it as a direct question again is, am I a burden? This is a big question that we've just kicked around a little bit, and I think it's a question you feel like came to mind for you. What do you want to share in that space today?
So I do have that question a lot with this. I can, in fact, it isn't even asked in the cancer support groups. It's just flowing out of people without asking.
You definitely ask it in your head.
Yes. And, it'll come out with things like, oh, I didn't want to burden so-and-so with this, or, I need a ride over here. I need this. I need anywhere from practical to emotional help, all that sort of stuff. And my experience, I'll just state like an overall principle, is that yes, involve your family in this journey. This journey has something for everyone, and it's not. There are tough, negative aspects with the journey, especially in the physical medical space, but there are also points of discussion that you may have with the person, coming alongside and serving someone. There are some intangibles here that really can't be measured that come to the forefront, where it's an honor and a privilege to come alongside someone who's really suffering. And man, I've seen that so much in my journey, and where people have wanted to be a part of my journey, they're almost begging me to ask them, to drive me to. I remember I had radiation therapy way down in Lower Manhattan in Chinatown, way down. And I had to get there every day for, 7 weeks, however long it was. And do you realize someone came down with me every time?
Now,
a guy came down with me.
These weren't 60-year-old single women begging you to go down, right?
These were men. In fact, one time, a fella who I know, who shall be nameless, expresses his love through service. And I was sitting in front of him at a church service, and I could tell there was a bug. There was a problem he was having.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I wonder what the deal is. And it dawned on me that I hadn't asked him to drive me down to radiation therapy. And so I turned around and I said, hey, would you drive me down at least one or two times? And he lit up. I think it's not only the service, but it's that time that we can spend with each other, because it was an hour and a half down, grab a quick bite to eat, hour and a half back, that we would spend quality time with each other, And so I got to do that with pastors and all kinds of people. But that's when I realized it was not a burden. It was an opportunity in many cases for people to come alongside of me.
Yeah, can I rephrase just to...
Yes, please.
Maybe clarity. Cancer is a burden.
Yes.
Cancer is a burden.
Yep.
You're not a burden. Your needs are an opportunity.
Thank you.
Opportunity for relationship and connection is the way... I think that's what I hear you saying, but I just want to I don't want to be in denial about cancer is a burden. Like, you're carrying a painful burden, but you are not a burden. You're an opportunity for relationship.
Yeah. And even there were times, Leslie, my former wife, she we would get meals for like 6 weeks after a major surgery.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just a meal. People would drop over. I'd be in my bathrobe with tubes and everything coming out, but they'd drop over just to say hi, hug. It was that point of contact.
Yeah.
Of just, hey, we're in this with you. And I could tell it wasn't that what spoke to me was, Peter, you need to allow people to serve you. You need to let people serve you. You need to involve people in your journey. That's when I became, it took me 10 years to become public about my journey. And, people want to experience my journey with me. They want to discover how is this guy processing this,
Yeah, I think those are good. What you're saying is, in this case, is rather than viewing yourself as a burden,
yes,
let people enjoy the relationship and the opportunity of sharing the cancer burden. So you're not the burden, but there is a burden, and when you allow somebody to walk along beside you, it brings great joy, meaning, purpose. It helps them to find purpose in their own lives.
And I do want to mention one thing, because this is a biggie. It is a journey also for the main caregiver. And their journey is a journey into what are my limits. Their journey is a journey into when do I need to pull back and let other people come in and intervene in the physical and the emotional space.
Oh, you're touching on something that's good. So there could be a tendency of one person
Correct.
taking all of the care burden or care needs, let's say it that way. And there's an opportunity to walk in humility and ask for help.
Correct.
To find more connection, because you could try to play the hero role, I suppose.
And the caregiver, the spotlight's on the cancer patient.
Yeah.
But the caregiver is suffering and struggling right along with the cancer. Yeah. It's usually a loved one, a partner, a spouse, whatever. They have their own set of needs, and no one is looking at them saying, what are your needs? You know what I mean?
This sounds like a whole episode.
It is. I think it is.
I love that. But I'm glad that you mentioned that. So there's something to be talked about there. But the base question of, am I a burden? You're saying no, but your cancer itself is a burden, but you are an opportunity. This whole situation is an opportunity to develop relationship, purpose, and connection, and allow other people to find joy in serving.
Yeah. There's times my doctor and nurse, they'll say, Peter knows so much in this space, the medical space, It's like, I don't want to know anything about this stuff. So you're right. The cancer is the burden.
So we touched a bit, because you said something a second ago, is that the private journey, 10 years of private. And so the question was, what do I tell my family? Is the question. And so I'm going to even ask it slightly different. It's like, how would you change your communication now, looking back after having been on this journey for 18 years, what you've known and seen? What do you tell your family, friends, loved ones around you? What's your base advice here?
Yeah, it's good. And it runs the gamut. Some people not saying anything, other people divulging everything. Obviously, the age of a child has to come into play. What do you say to that person? That little child. My kids were, of course, I have a daughter who's 19 right now. So she grew, I had 18 years ago, my cancer started. So she grew up with it, and she heard things, I'm sure, that she wondered and questioned, because I was dealing with end of life stuff.
Yeah.
In fact, that's a good question. I should ask her that. What do you remember?
That she only knows you as a cancer patient.
Yeah,
as part
be
of your
interesting.
identity.
I think I may have asked her, but I'll have to ask Heather that. But anyway, I erred on the side of having cautious disclosure, but to be truthful and honest and give the full picture. Although when I would give a full picture, I did it under the guise of being calm and kind of stoic. That's how it's kind of how my personality is anyway. It's a little bit like...
You called your personality stoic.
A non-anxious presence.
This is an Italian.
Well,
oh my goodness.
Maybe it's my mom's influence in my bloodline, but I think it's, there's times, that's the one thing is I do believe in being truthful. And, one of our the people in our cancer support group didn't want to disclose to her family. She was a mom and a wife, and she didn't want to disclose the full truth. But it was eating her up. And I'm like, man, you really... So she went to a counselor. That helped her, and then she brought her family into the journey. I mean, personally, that's what I did. I brought my family right into the journey with me, the good, the bad, the ugly. And I got a lot of support by doing that.
Yeah, I want to share thoughts here.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm struggling with something, we've both been part of the recovery journey, and when I don't share my struggles, what I pass up from my own journey is an opportunity for intimacy with those around me. And so what I'm finding for my own journey is the more I share the things that I'm struggling with, whether it be physical or, issues of addictive behavior, that the more I share that, and it's even like the accountability, I've recognized that for myself, that a lot of times I don't share, I'll put together, hey, I'm going to do these things, as Scazzero talks about building a rule of life.
Yeah.
And every time I've done this in the past, I have had rules, things that I thought, hey, this is what I want to do on the backside of this study, but I never wrote them down. And the reason why is that I didn't want the accountability of that. And now as I complete another one of these rounds, the group of guys that I was around, we're going to share our rules. And what I found was that there's a lot more intimacy and trust and connection that comes when you take time to share the rules and allow people to enter the journey with you. And so my reason for mentioning that is that I think what you're doing whenever you share your journey is you're opening yourself up for greater intimacy with those around you, whether that be your family, your spouse, or friends around you. You're really, you're opening an intimacy door in this arena.
It's really true. I mean, some people pass and it's like, wow, I never knew they were even sick. And you're like, okay, I get it that they didn't feel comfortable sharing it, but you kind of feel like you missed out on being able to comfort and come alongside that person. Yeah.
I think this is good. So I won't, I have a friend of mine who even talks about, his journey and his privates and all these kind of things. And I was like, this is too much. There's areas where it's too much, right, that you don't share.
Yeah.
But I'll leave that person nameless.
There's everything is open for discussion when you've been like me in the medical arena where everything
I have to have a little
nurses, doctors have seen
it's
just out there.
I don't want to know everything.
I know.
Anyway, I'll move on here. So we did this. Who do I tell and what I tell? I'm going to go a little bit into a slightly different arena, and it's am I ready to die? Because this is a big piece in the cancer journey. It's like when the big C word comes out, fear of death is something that comes to mind. And so we wrote down the question, am I ready to die? How did you process this question, and what are the key things there? I know it's a complete topic change a little bit from what we were just sharing on. So
I think how I at least describe it to people in the cancer support group when I'm asked, it's usually, hey, I'm not ready to pass yet. And my response is, correct, you're not ready. But when you are ready, you will know. I mean, my experience with people, even doing end of life processes, has been when they're ready to pass, they're actually ready to pass. There's a peace that comes over them. Now, I'm used to dealing with people of faith, and there's the faith. God provides that element, Jesus does, of assurances and things. But even with that, they've never experienced going to heaven, leaving this physical body and transitioning to heaven before. So, but like right now, intellectually, I understand that when I pass, I'm going to go to heaven. I don't understand how the process transition works, but I know that. But I'm not ready to die right now, in the sense of, I'm going to keel over right here in this chair. But going down the process of, if I have another recurrence and it's a tough one and I'm in hospice or whatever, I'm going to resign myself in acceptance of, okay, this is my time. This is the time that God has chosen for me to transition into heaven. and I'll be ready. I've seen it. The reason why I know that will happen is as I've experienced it so many times with people who, when they were able to surrender and dwell in acceptance, they were actually ready to move on and go to the next life.
And is part of the importance just being willing to ask the question? So it's not, in other words, rather than avoiding.
I think
there's something big that's important about just asking the question. Is like just recognizing, hey, there is a risk of death, and so much of our lives we avoid the question. It's as if we could live forever, but and there's this, I hate to call it a gift, but there's a gift of awareness,
right,
that you get as awareness, at least the risk of passing. That is it the importance of asking this question and then allowing yourself to process that question?
Yeah, I think so. And almost like that movie, The Bucket List. Remember that movie? So in 2005 at Sloan Kettering, I made a bucket list. And they were trips because I had never really been that many places. Mm-hmm. I fulfilled every one on that bucket list, every trip, everything that I wanted to do. And but then it got to be of when Leslie and I were actually divorcing, I wanted to know where she was going to end up because I wanted to see where my youngest daughter would grow up. I'm like, Lord, I want to at least live to see that. And then it was like, okay, well, Lord, if it be your will, then I'd love to see one of my kids get married, which happened last week. Mm-hmm. I'd love to meet a grandchild, which happened a year ago. Hope is now a year. Mm-hmm. And so I've had all these little like gifts that I would have never had. But I think that the question of, am I ready to die? Like I was just talking about a family friend that passed about a month ago at the age of 27. He didn't experience marriage and having a family and all these other things in life. Yet at the point, he knew he was going to pass like a month before. He could tell his physical body. He made his peace with God.
Yeah.
And he was ready to pass after that. And I've had other friends actually come to me who knew they were going to pass. They just knew. And they said to me, is there anything that I need to ask for your forgiveness for?
Awesome.
Yeah. So I've had that happen.
I think that seems like, so I'm going to make a hypothesis and we'll see if you agree with this, but the most important thing you can do to answer this question is answer, am I at peace with God and others?
Man, that's it right there. And, one of my good buddies during COVID, love this guy, awesome dude, father of 5 kids, accountant, attorney, all this, that I knew him from practicing law. He had a headache, went to bed one night and passed during the night. That's easy. He didn't really face death like a cancer patient has to deal with the prospect of death, but he also didn't have the opportunity to be at peace with God and others. That's a great way to put it. Am I at peace with God and others? And peace with myself.
It's a way of exploring the question, are you ready to pass?
Peace with myself, God, and others.
Yes, add yourself too. I think that's good.
Yep.
Awesome. I think it's a great way to pursue the question. I'm glad you're sharing a bit of your own journey. I would have guessed, just from our conversations, that you started out with a bucket list because that seems like a natural thing to do.
Yeah.
And what I hear you saying is the bucket list would be never ending, but it didn't really answer the question. But when you were at peace with God and others and yourself, then it doesn't matter whether you add another bucket list item or not. It's not going to change anything about being ready to die. But being at peace with God and others is it. Yeah, it's the place.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. And I think it ties in a little bit with the next question that I have, and it's like, what do I do with the fear of a reoccurrence?
Yeah.
Because it seems like I've seen this quite a bit where you have a cancer diagnosis, maybe treatment, and your scans come back clean, or there's no signs of this, or you've talked a lot about that you always had a medical solution,
right?
And so as long as there seems to be steps and medical solutions along the way,
right?
But there's this kind of underlying fear of,
because I didn't have a medical solution in 2015
right.
or 2017. I say 6 recurrences, and I think it's 5 or 6 in there. And it's really discouraging when you've been through pain and suffering, a surgery, a treatment, whatever, you come out of it and the scan shows something and your doctor calls you in and says, "Oh man, we found cancer here and here." It's really discouraging. It takes the air right out of you.
I'm watching that with somebody in our organization right now, bladder cancer, who did all the treatments, went through it. And it was a painful process, being sick and dealing with the pain of the treatments and all of that. And then, time later, yes, hey, there's a new scan and there's a new tumor.
Yeah.
And it's just like a sucker punch.
Right.
And I'm watching that with this individual, and I feel that pain that person is dealing with in, being sucker punched.
It kept happening so much to me that where every time I went, there was bad news. I mean, I think I got to the point where when I saw the door to the hospital, I'd get nauseous.
So how did you process the fear?
Because it was just so unbelievable.
Where do you go with that? I guess that's the big question.
That is a great question. Again, it's Lord, can I accept the journey? Can I accept the news? Can I still find life within this news? Can I still, Lord, bring this to you and have you speak life into my soul, into my spirit, into my being? Even though my physical body is I remember looking down at my body thinking, you have failed. Don't put any stock in my body. I mean, I was to the point where it's like, who cares if you work out and eat right? I mean, my body was just a big failure. So I think that that the issue is you sort of have to get back to that baseline. I always called it a baseline. And the baseline was, for me at least, I knew that first day would be a day of, remember we had the trauma, it was that frozen, I would be in a frozen mode for at least that day, where all I could do is go back home. I didn't want to talk to anyone.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to lie there in bed, and if I could watch a movie, fine, but I couldn't deal with it. I was frozen. And we said how that's a gift, right? How the body needs that time of frozenness. That we talked about that in the trauma episode last time. But and then after that, I deal with processing it. Okay, what's going on? What's happening? What am I? And then I process the fear and the anger and sadness, and I go through the whole process of handling my emotions and looking at what's happened with the past. Can I do a gratitude journal? How do I bring this before God right now? Can I bring him my disappointment? And for me, it's like I picture Jesus coming through my front door, coming through my front door, and I sit him in a seat, and I tell him, this is where I'm struggling today. I'm having problems with this and that, and I thank you for that. But I talk to him like I do you.
And you're connecting that, the longevity of this back to your faith journey, that the only way you can get to this place of dealing with the fear. And I think it's tying into the question we have next. And maybe these are just so closely, maybe they're the same question. And it's, what does acceptance look like?
Yeah.
I wrote it down, and you told a great story of your mom having gone through, multiple diagnoses and being, at the
major surgery, treatments, chemo.
The story was the story of, she was, I think, going for a fourth diagnosis, and they were like, any questions you have? And her question was, do you know where I can get a good tuna on toast or something like that? It's like,
Mom.
And so it fits into, she got to acceptance of, this is the diagnosis. I kind of already know what the treatment is. Can we move to this place? But what does acceptance look like for you? Because I think it ties into, what do I do with the fear of a reoccurrence?
Yeah.
It's
Well, I mean, one of the things, Paul says in the scriptures to dwell on the realities of heaven. But I will tell you, to have an eternal perspective for me is huge. This is not everything.
Yeah.
This life, this world that we live in right now is temporary. This body is temporary. This is not my eternal state. I'm not going to stay, and my body's not going to go into a ground with me, with my soul and spirit in it, and just perish. So
this is something I want to just rephrase what you just said to me, because I think this is something that we spend a lot of time in the recovery space on. And I almost like to think of it as like the journey to reality.
Yeah.
And so what you're really saying is I start connecting with what is reality. And reality is that I'm not eternal, this, in this body. Yeah. It's going to die. Is it, 1 month or 10 years or 15? You don't know. But reality is you have to deal with this at some point in time in your life. Right. And so you started really working towards reality. Yeah. That's what I think I hear you say.
One of my, in my recovery journey last night, one of the questions was, how has Christ restored you? And my answer, the first one, was to accept reality.
I love it. Yes.
Yeah.
Acceptance of reality has so many things where we actually have to figure out what reality is.
Right.
And so I think in one sense, when I think about the fear of reoccurrence, something that I do a lot is when I get bad news, or I think there's bad news in front of me, sometimes I just don't listen to it, or I won't take the time to open that bad news. Like if you have an envelope on the counter and you know it's bad news, do I open it or do I avoid for a while? And sometimes I avoid because it's sometimes easier to deny or just avoid than it is to accept reality. But it didn't change reality.
Right.
It just, I was basically just delaying my knowledge of it. And something big about this, what I think you're talking about is when our journey changes to embracing reality, and it's also then embracing a trust journey with God to step into our reality.
And I think, what do we do with that reality? I was just talking with one of my daughters, and who wants to pursue something further with her education. And I noticed that her self-talk was hard. And I said, I'm hearing just really tough self-talk. I said, no, you're a very smart girl that works hard, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, she goes, you're right. I'm going to change my self-talk. And so in that situation, for me personally, my self-talk is, how many times have I seen God do amazing things in my journey? Always. It's been amazing. Has it been hard? Yes. Have I had recurrences? Yes. Do I have a great exit strategy? Yes. Has God delivered me unbelievable peace and strength through this journey? Yes. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of yeses there.
Yeah. And I think what you just, part of our reality, and this is something we've talked about in other episodes, is getting to purpose.
Right.
And so at the moment you say, no, God has a purpose in this, and it's not to harm me.
Right.
But it's bigger than it. I may not fully understand it, but can I lean into that? Can I just embrace that reality, whatever it is, and trust that it's a real purpose that has real meaning, that is valuable?
Yeah.
And I think that's a way of us really dealing with some of these hardships that come in our lives as a whole. And especially for a cancer patient, is to recognize how much purpose there is. I really like that part about your daughter coming in and the negative self-talk. It's something to examine. And I know my wife and I have talked about this quite a bit about, she's had some negative things in her job environment here or there. And I'll hear her come home and she'll either be speaking negativity. And I say, but is that actually what's going on? Or is that, what somebody's telling you or that you're hearing? And I said, why don't you give it like a week or two?
Yeah.
And a week or two later, the story's different.
Yeah.
And because it's so easy to live into the negativity of the moment.
Yeah. I didn't feel well and my kidneys hurt. And I remember getting up a couple of times saying to myself, I can't do this anymore, and stopping myself. No, I can do this. I've been doing this. And then the verse, it's really a verse about suffering. Paul is talking about having nothing, having everything, being in prison, everything. And he says, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. And that's what I got down to, the self-talk of, okay, well, no, I can do this journey through Christ who gives me strength.
Awesome.
Because that was in the context of suffering when Paul gave that phrase. It doesn't mean I can go out there and dunk a basketball right now. I can't do all things. But in the context of suffering through Christ, I can.
That's such a great...
Be victorious. Yeah.
It's probably a great way to really get down to this acceptance piece.
Yep.
And that's the question I kind of wanted to end on today, was acceptance. What does acceptance look like? How do I embrace acceptance? What are the ways of doing that? And anything else you want to share in that space? We had a question here that I'll put out.
I'll just say acceptance equals peace.
Awesome. Yeah, because we were going to talk about negative interest rates otherwise, and I don't think
No, I don't want to talk about that, because I don't know anything about it.
That was a question Peter's dad had for him, which then Peter talked to me. We thought we should put on the list, but we're not going to go through negative interest rates.
My 91-year-old dad who's not really speaking, I got pulled in out of the house, and he said to me, "Oh, your dad has a question for you. Your dad has a question." I'm like, wow, this is amazing, because he's had a lot of health issues, and he's not speaking, and he pulls me in, and I stand before him. Dad, what's the deal? What are negative interest rates? What? He was reading something, and my dad always liked that kind of stuff. So
I love that.
It was hilarious. Yeah.
Such a good story. So we're going to stop, though, on acceptance. And we're not in negative interest rates, so we don't need to worry about that right now.
Good. You can explain it to me one day.
But we do thank you for listening, and we'll have a lot more to share in coming episodes. So thanks a lot for all of you that are paying attention and just on this journey with us. And if you want to get more resources, go to cancerandpeace.com, and there's a lot out there, especially Peter's book, Cancer and Peace. And that's it for now.
Thank you.